And I see on the agenda, we have a quick round of introductions again, because we do have public guests here. So we will go through that quickly. And then open to public comment for items that are not on the agenda. And then we will have a presentation about our capital budget, proposed budget. Is that correct? Sure, right? Yes. Okay. And have a discussion of that. And then after we are done reviewing the capital budget, we will open conversation around the Glazer specific plan again. If everybody on Zoom, be great, or Emily will do it for you. Okay, so let's start with some quick introductions. I'm Megan Cope. I'm the chair of the Planning Commission. And you want to start down there?
Hi, I'm Emily Beckett. I'm a member of the commission.
Alex Daly, Planning Commission member.
Chapin Kaner, Planning Commission.
Then I think we have two folks online.
Shayla and Kate.
Zoom, Shayla and Kate. We can't currently see their cameras, but let's see. Oh, there's Kate. Okay.
Kate Lamar, Planning Commission member, Vice Chair.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shayla Livingston. I'm a Planning Commission member, and I apologize for not being on video, but I am fully here.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Shayla. Okay. Any public comment regarding items that are not on our agenda for tonight? On Zoom. Okay, well, that was quick. Now we're caught up on our time. So capital budget, we have a proposed capital budget that we have had a quick look at, and we have some presentation tonight, correct?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sitting at that table, so you'd be near the owl. Yep. Let me know what you want me to screen share.
Do you have the capital budget you can pull up?
And can you introduce yourself, please,
I
too?
will. My name is Shirley Laffey, and I am the Director of Finance and HR for the town of Williston.
Great.
So if you just want to, so Emily, if you just go to the, I don't have a page number for you, or let's see, but do you have pages on that? I'm not sure which version you're pulling up.
This is
Yeah.
page 4.
If you just want to go to page 41, we're just going to look. So previously what we've done is just gone through the actual projects themselves. So we're going to start with roads. This is the only project in roads. It's minor transportation improvements. A variety of things this has been used for in the past. Some of them are pedestrian crossing signs, you know, the flashing lights, turn lanes, backup power supply at corners. So a variety of things. This is funded with impact fees. So we have a transportation impact fee. And those funds are used specifically for this capital project. So meaning it's not in the general fund budget that taxpayers vote on. So I'm not actually presenting for so many people in the room, so it's nice to see participation. So I'm gonna, unless there are questions, I'll just kind of pause, and if there are questions, please go ahead, and if not, I'll just move along to the next project. So Emily, I am now going to page 48. And it'll say Allenbrook Community Park. And while she gets there, I'll just talk. So this is a project that has been funded in the past, both with general fund dollars and recreation impact fees. There is nothing proposed in the 24 budget for this project. The scoping study has been completed. We are looking at phase 1 of this project. With these funds that have been set aside for previous years, there's just short of 290,000. But then there is the balance of the recreation impact fees that have been collected over time that would also be used, primarily used for the first phase of this Allen Brook Park Community Park build out, which is really the infrastructure is the proposed first phase of this park. So roads, parking. I think there's just a little community park there. It's just the infrastructure is going to take most of the $800,000 budget that we have. But again, nothing in the FY24 budget. On the next page, our parks improvements. There's $15,000 in this budget. And with that, if you keep scrolling down to the next page. So Todd Goodwin puts together a schedule, and that goes out, it goes farther than what is actually in this presentation. So he looks at all of the amenities in the parks and looks at when they were last replaced and when they need to be replaced. So this schedule is the rollout of all those replacements. So with that and any unspent funds is how we determine what needs to be in the FY24 capital budget for funding. This year, that's 15,000. Half of that is coming from the general fund operating budget, and the other half is coming from rec impact fees. You can scroll to the next page. So the other part of that, so there's parks improvements and parks replacements. And why do we have two? For parks, for the impact fees, we can only use those to fund new things in the parks. So that's why we distinguish between parks improvements, so brand new things we're putting in the parks, and parks replacement, which are those capital items that need to be replaced on some basis. And again, there's about $30,000 of leftover funding. Some of this was ARPA funding from last year. But on the next page, Todd also has a schedule of that. And again, what needs to be replaced when by park. So he's got a very detailed inventory that he keeps to determine, and then that changes based on wear and tear on the amenities in the parks now. So I'm going to move to page 54, so a couple pages down. And this is the Catamount Community Forest infrastructure improvements. There's 17, almost 18,000 right now, and that's without considering what might be spent in the rest of FY23, and just looking at $2,500 because of the balance that's there right now for FY24. This all comes from the general fund. And that is a list of project improvements. Right now, there's some trails that need to be developed better. There's, I think, 7 bridges in the forest that need to be replaced. So the Catamount Community Committee, along with Simon, now helped to come up with a list of projects to be done in Catamount in the community forest. So that, because of the size of that, it has its own budget. And then on the next page, we have the Town Trail Management Fund. This is has $21,000 as the time this budget was done as carryover money, but also FY23. And again, this is assessment that is done. Was Melinda, now is Simon, but going through looking at all of our natural trails and what needs to be done. A lot of that is typically boardwalk work that needs to be done. So this is again just the list of what's coming up, what needs to be done in the next few years. And that is also funded with general fund budget money. Okay. So I am going to jump now to page 60. So we are in the part of the capital budget that has to do with equipment fund proposals. So the first one is the police fleet vehicle replacement. They keep a schedule of, they look at mileage and wear and tear on the vehicles themselves, because there's a lot of use in those vehicles. The cost of the vehicle is about half the cost of outfitting one vehicle. All the electrical, the computer equipment that goes into those vehicles, the lights and et cetera, are about half the cost of each police cruiser. There is right now, and when I'm talking about each of these, I want to talk about our ways to move towards finding more energy efficient vehicles. So as of right now, we don't have any, because they have some hybrids, which we have not tested yet. The Essex PD, our chief is in contact with the Essex PD. They rolled out about a year ago 2 hybrid vehicles. So just, seeing how those work. Right now, there is not an EV option for police vehicles, just because of the time, even with a quick charger, the time it takes to charge a vehicle. And of course, they need immediate response when they're called. So right now, we don't have anything electric or hybrid in the fleet, but the chief and lieutenant are keeping their eyes open. And most all of our purchasing for any of these bigger purchases, but especially the vehicles, we go through the state contract for all of those, because we get much better pricing than if we just tried to purchase on our own with a vendor. Traffic safety equipment. So those are those big signs you see by the side of the road saying, here's the limit, speed limit, and this is how fast you're going. So those do help, I shouldn't say how, they do help to reduce speeding on our roads where those are posted. And they and this is primarily a plan to put money aside every year to replace those over the life cycle of those signs. And funded through the general fund or the operating budget. Police technology, that is the server in the building, the cameras, and the video recording equipment that, again, the dates on the far left of this screen are the dates that things need to be replaced. So the camera equipment, you say, oh, why didn't we replace that? So this is still in here, but we got a we got a grant through the Vermont Department of Homeland Security that allowed us to replace all of our grants on the police building, added cameras on the town hall next door and at the fire station. So this is, again, primarily just putting money aside so we don't have to do it in a lump sum in the budget. We put it away each year for when the eventual replacement is necessary. So then it helps for the taxpayers, it helps to level out our budget instead of saying, oh, we need 3 new vehicles. So now we need, $200,000, whatever. So a lot of these equipment projects are all about putting money aside annually. So the money is there to purchase whatever the item is in the year that we need to replace it. The next page is police firearms. Those were just replaced this year. So again, this is just about setting money aside for the next time that we replace firearms, which is typically 7 to 9 years. Emily, and I'm going to skip the public safety communications tower, which is the next one, because we aren't funding that this year and there's a lot of work, but this project will come to being at some point, probably through a budget, but they're for fire and police, as you use your own cell phones, you're in Williston and you always drop coverage. They have the same thing with radios. So we need to do something to address that issue. So we are looking, we already actually have agreement with Vermont Electric Co-op to place this tower up on Old Creamery Road. We have a lease, a no fee lease that they will let us put the tower up, but there's still a lot more work to do and the details. So there's nothing in here for FY24 budget. A fire 4x4 replacement vehicle. So those are the two vehicles. Again, will be replaced in 24 and 26. This is same funding issue. We're funding these every year so that the funds are available when they need replacement. The department will look when they get ready to replace the first one in 2024 to see if there's any electric vehicle options. One of them might be the electric pickup trucks. And I'll just say this in regards to all of the trucks in our capital budget, because there are those and the recreation and public works, but the state contract only currently, and they just updated it December 16th or something like that. They had a couple of EV options in the contract, but there are no trucks. They just added the trucks, but unfortunately there's no pricing. So if you look at gasoline, and I know there are all kinds of issues, but gasoline versus an electric truck, $50,000 more. So we'll continue to just watch that, and as the state contract changes, and we'll continue to look at that option for electric trucks. And as they look for the option, these are SUVs right now, they'll look for other options to be able to purchase something that is energy efficient in an electric vehicle instead of gas powered. Let's see. The utility vehicle replacements, that's a 4x4 that they use for primarily for rescues, like a Catamount. They have that out there when they have their races. So it is a little UTV that with a stretcher on it. Should something happen, they use that to go out where a vehicle can't travel to go rescue someone. Again, it's just money being put aside every year for the eventual replacement of that equipment. And again, even though there are years typically assigned to those, when that time comes, if it doesn't have a lot of wear and tear, or they feel like it could go for a couple more years or another year, everything is considered before they just replace something. Just because it's on the schedule doesn't necessarily mean that's absolutely when it's getting replaced. A lot of the next ones, I'll talk quickly, but for the fire department, defibrillator replacement, I'm going to go through a couple. Hydraulic rescue tools, fire, their server down there, fire radio replacements, fire turnout gear. So these are all the SCBA, which is self-contained breathing apparatus. So it's the thing that the fire men wear on their back when they're going into a scene. Almost all of these things are, again, just funds put aside every year. So when they get to the point of replacing the equipment, the funds are there without having a big increase in the budget, the proposed budget. So again, all of these things are reviewed as each thing comes up to say, okay, how many do we need? Do we need to replace them? Will they last another year? Along with their turnout gear, those are the clothes that they wear. You wouldn't think that's a capital, but the full gear for each firefighter is just under $5,000 for the equipment they wear. So it is a capital project. Firefighting equipment, same idea. Then the last one is the ambulance. So our ambulances are on a 8-year rotation. So every 4 years we are looking to typically we do a note instead of going through bonds, because bonding is just too long for the life of an ambulance. So every 4 years, an ambulance is purchased. It stays as the #1 ambulance for 4 years, and then it goes to the #2 ambulance for another 4 years, and then it goes out and the replacement comes in. So that is the cycle that we have with our ambulances at the fire department. And with the addition of the 9 new firefighters in the last year's budget, in the current year that we're in, we have definitely been able to do a lot more of our own responses and have relied on mutual aid for a lot fewer calls. Which means they get this quicker too. So the Emily's page 77. So this is the equipment for public works. We're going to go through now. So large highway trucks. So those are the big trucks that you see out there that do the plowing. Again, there is a replacement cycle for these about every 7 years. So again, we're putting money aside just so when that particular truck's life is up, we trade them in and a new truck is purchased. Large highway equipment, same works the exact same way. Reviewing, there's a whole list of equipment there that they use to maintain our roads. And again, those are reviewed. There's dates assigned, but the equipment is always reviewed before we decide that we're just gonna go out and buy it. And everything you see here is also purchased using the state contract for lower pricing. Highway pickup truck replacement. This is one where we continue to, as I said, the electric vehicles just got added to the state contract, but with no favorable pricing. So Bruce Hoare will continue to watch this, not only just for electric, but maybe electric hybrid replacement as he looks to purchase the first replacement in 2024. They do typically have very high mileage, so the schedule that you see for replacement is pretty much what it is. The next one, buildings and facility mower replacement. So we're going to talk about parks later on, but I'll just talk about them together.
Can I ask a question? Do we need this much detail for what our purpose is?
Yeah, probably.
Our purpose is to say whether the capital plan budget matches the town plan.
Yep.
And so this amount of detail on some of the just normal maintenance and so forth, it to me doesn't add anything.
It's up to you guys.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, maybe, I had a similar thought. I think we definitely wanted to hear about the electric vehicles because that is certainly in the town plan and that was a concern last year. So I appreciate that information. And then, so maybe we can do a slightly less detailed level of coverage.
As we look at the electric vehicles, so just FYI, the Public Works Department within Public Works is our stormwater coordinator. And so she's in charge of all the permitting process we have to do with our stormwater ponds. She goes out and inspects those ponds. So we purchased an SUV. We tried to go through the state contracts to get an electric hybrid. But the order went out and came back as being denied because there are absolutely no vehicles that we could that were out there and available. So we ended up just buying a gasoline SUV. So we are trying to look for more energy efficient alternatids, but just haven't been successful. So what I was going to say with the building facilities, the mower replacement, Todd and Bruce, so Todd is Parks and Recreation and Bruce being Public Works. They are both looking. Todd actually went to CCR and tried a electric mower that is a test mower. It's not able to buy it yet. So he was able to just try it around up there, but said, you know, it worked wonderfully. It just can't buy it. So he's just watching for when those become available, and they're both looking to just move to electric charged mowers away from gasoline powered mowers. Let me just try to think. So that's Todd I was talking about. And I guess we talked about the vehicles at a high level, and it's not really part of the capital improvement plan, but within parks and public works, and certainly more in parks, they use just a lot of equipment to maintain the parks. So as something needs to be replaced, Todd is moving to electric battery charged electric replacements like blowers and weed whackers. So Todd has already started that, but only as something needs to be replaced. He's not just going out to buy something, he's just replacing it. The other project that's already actually in the capital budget, but it was the parking lot in back of the town hall desperately needs some work. So right now, that is with some engineers who are beginning the process. And within that engineering, they are going to place conduit. So when the police get to have electrically charged vehicles, the conduit will already be laid, and then it'll just be installing the chargers. And same thing in this parking lot, when it's redone, there'll be conduit to actually do another charger that's for the public, for employees and the public. There are 2 electric charging stations that have been approved in the budget, and Melinda is working with the Energy Committee to determine the best placement. There originally was a plan, and I think that plan has changed to be a couple of parks where there are high use. So hopefully those will be in by this coming summer.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Julie, in our response last year to the previous proposal, previous year's proposal, there was a request that solar canopies be considered for the town hall parking lot. Do you know if that is still on the table, or if that has entered the table?
Let me check and get back to you, because I know there was discussion of it. I'm not sure it's in the engineers designing phase, so we'll have to ask Eric. It's not. Thank you, Matt. See, look. Yeah,
So we'll be providing some assistance from the planning office side when we start talking about design, because the design of parking lots is regulated in the zoning that we manage. And because we also have our energy planner in the office, we'll be looking at placement possibilities for solar canopy, and certainly making sure the lot is ready for solar canopy, even if it can't be done in the first phase.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that because it was
Thank
a
you.
point we raised last year, and
Yeah.
I didn't hear you mention it.
I have written comments
Okay.
prepared about things that we've referred last year.
Okay. And anything else?
that was it.
Okay,
I did want to mention at the very end, there's an item in 25-26 for parking ban lights. And this
Saw
is
that.
something we talked about tangentially, at least with the form-based code in Taft Corners, that as that area becomes denser, the town will need to be able to move from a always no parking overnight during the winter standard to a no parking when the lights are flashing standard. So there's some budgeting happening in here that's supportive of something that we identified as a challenge when we talked about Taft Corners.
all right. Planning Commission members, questions for Shirley, or?
I have feedback, because I've been through all this in detail. It was available to us in our agenda.
Yep.
And last year, there were a couple of things we recommended, and the energy coordinator was hired, which was one of the key things we recommended. And in reviewing all the things in terms of are they meeting the town plan? All the kinds of things you went through are meeting the town plan. We're improving our parks, we're doing all that. What you didn't mention is that the second sidewalk plow was again pushed out another year. And this is now the third year that we're going to say, to meet our desire to have the town be walkable and have kids be able to safely wait for the bus and walk to school. I've actually written something down about this. It also, the second sidewalk plow is a backup for the first one. If the first one breaks right now, we have no sidewalk plowing.
That is correct.
And it has been pushed out now 3 times. We are currently plowing only 10.62 miles out of 32 miles of sidewalk and multi-use paths in the town. There's a surplus in the public works garage fund that would cover this expenditure. Our debt service is declining 48,000 this year. Local options receipts continue to trend above projections and ARPA funds are available. So why additional sidewalk plowing is critical, making our town walkable in all seasons. Given public input, both solicited and unsolicited, deferring this purchase makes no sense. And this is not, you're the messenger, not the, but can you help us? Do we have to put it in writing again? And where does it go?
So one of the, I'll just say in this budget, trying, and it's not done yet, so your comments will go to the select board, but trying to, well, our first goal was to bring a budget in with a 5% increase with the rate of inflation. That we found it possible. Well, we came in at 6.5%. So adding the second sidewalk plow would also mean adding another employee. And in this budget, we moved a couple of positions that were part-time to a little more part-time, and then one library position from part-time to full-time. And we did no other adds in this budget for staffing. So that's the other part of what we were struggling with.
Yeah, we do understand that someone has to drive the sidewalk plow, but the number of actual hours does not require a full-time employee year-round. And so I presume that if the department had the equipment, they would find a way to do the better, more plowing than they're doing now.
Right. So we have this, I'll just use our, for instance, so we have that in theory sounds wonderful, but we have a part-time position in the summer just to help with maintenance, outside maintenance, inside maintenance of our buildings. And this summer, we just had no one apply, and we posted it as full-time for the
Sure,
summer.
I'm sorry, but we're talking about the capital budget. We're not talking about whether you can hire people. We're talking about should the equipment be purchased because it's a goal of the town to do this. And so I have a really hard time working backwards that we had trouble hiring someone last summer, so we're not going to purchase a plow for next year.
Right, it relates to the fact that trying to find someone to work part-time to do this.
I understand when I said that they'll find a way to do it. I didn't mean
Yeah.
necessarily hire someone part-time. I mean, maybe somebody after they're done with a shift of something else does the sidewalks, maybe not as quickly as we'd like. Just already they prioritize and they do certain roads first and then they do the sidewalks. And so they may have to prioritize it maybe further down the list, but the idea that we can't drive the plow does not to me mean we shouldn't have it on our capital plan. To me, it's a false argument. I'm sorry, because I know you're the messenger.
That's okay.
Can
I had the same question.
should I go on?
Yeah, maybe if there's a lot of detail, though, it would be better submitted in writing.
I'm hitting the big things.
Okay, maybe 2 more big things.
There's no funding for the Environmental Reserve Fund in the budget. It's 0. And we, as the Planning Commission, trying to look out for the town plan goals, which include our goals that we like the rural character, we like views, et cetera, et cetera. When we get things like the plan for the Glazer property, if the Environmental Reserve Fund doesn't have money in it, one of the tools we have to meet the town plan goals is missing. And so I just feel like it's a big hole to just drop that out because we don't want the tax rate to go over a certain amount. To me, we need to be inventive in finding ways to fund it. And that's not, we're funding we're funding replacement guns and replacement equipment for the fire department year by year, whether we have a tax increase or not. And then we're saying we can't fund the environmental reserve fund. And to me, it's saying that certain goals, that basically the short-term goals are a higher priority than long-term goals. And that's a problem. We as a planning commission are looking out for the long-term goals of the town. And so we need the environmental reserve fund.
So we've heard from the Conservation Commission too, and they'll be writing something, so that will come back to us.
Okay.
So,
And ditto affordable housing,
yes.
Yes.
which I'm sure was one of your next points.
And on the town hall parking lot expansion, we mentioned canopies partly because in working through the form-based code for the growth center, we thought it was really important to make sure that all impervious surface was available for solar generation, given our energy goals. And we thought that would be a great project to demonstrate how the town can do it so that developers would then see it. And so putting conduit in for chargers is one thing, but putting conduit in and doing the engineering for solar canopies is another thing that we were saying should be included. We also mentioned battery backup because with this much generation, having battery backup lets us smooth the impact on the grid. And in fact, if we have enough battery backup, we could retire the diesel generator, which takes man hours as well as fuel and cost to replace in the long run. So we suggested those things last year, and I saw nothing on those aspects of this town hall parking lot project. And I'll say just one more.
Okay.
On the police vehicles, you said like we don't have an electric one because it's needed available immediately when it's a police vehicle. Somehow Essex, Richmond, and other towns around us are getting electric vehicles and plug-in electrics and making it work. And I just feel like we're not leaning into this. We're waiting for the state to have it. I'm alternate for Green Mountain Transit Board. We use low-no grants. We use the diesel funds. There's all sorts of grants we get to help fund purchasing electric vehicles. And the Vermont Energy Investment Corp, the EIC, will help in monitoring the effectiveness of a purchase that's not just standard, like the state's approved it, so we're doing the standard thing. You can go out and do something that some other city that isn't the state has done. We don't have to be the first one. But I just feel like we're not leaning into the electric vehicle aspect. Thanks, and I can submit things in writing because I do have more comments.
That would be great. Thanks.
I was gonna say, and Matt or Emily will usually put something together with all of your comments to the select board.
Yeah,
as
we
well.
can have that on the January 3rd agenda,
Right.
finalize a memo.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you. All right, and thanks for your comments, Chicken. Other questions from Shayla or Kate? Do you have any questions for Shirley?
I don't.
The sidewalk plow, that was it. Chapin hit it.
It's a favorite topic of ours. All right, great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for coming and for all of your work making this happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Right, so now we are going to shift to round 3 of our community meeting for the Glazer specific plan. And there's a lot of materials in this now, and I hope that folks have been able to access them and have looked them over. I know the Planning Commission members have certainly had access to these and have read them, including the most recent submissions. And so, so what I would like to do you have any thoughts or recommendations, staff?
I can give
Side.
very brief just intros and just point folks' attention to a couple of new materials that
Okay.
are linked on this agenda.
That would be
And
great.
then you can proceed however you'd like.
Okay.
So we've kept all of the documents thus far linked in this agenda. So it looks gigantic, but you've seen most of it
Cumulative.
before. The staff report for this project and decision in front of the Planning Commission has not been changed since what you saw on December 6th. We did receive some additional comments through the survey, as well as 2 that were sent in, and we've linked those on your agenda as well. Underneath the link for the staff report, we have newly prepared a draft charge to applicant and advisory committee. The reason we've done this is not because we're assuming or presupposing any particular action by the planning commission, but of the options in front of you, this one is the most nuanced and might require a basis to have a discussion on. So not set in stone, nor is the decision to follow that path set in stone for the commission for sure. But for it to be an option to think about it all, we felt, you needed something to go on. And we tried to use that draft charge as a way to feed back to the planning commission what we think we've been hearing from commission members about this specific plan application, and what we think you've been hearing from the community about the application as well. So that's a document to take a look at. Other than that, we have just a couple things that came in close to last time's meeting. I'll direct folks to in the documents column, last couple bullets, the revised site plan that was submitted right before the 12/6 meeting, and a hypothetical, more sort of maximum build out drawing that the applicant prepared for comparison purposes as well.
Yeah, both of those showing that the view shed sight lines from the top corner looking towards Camel's Hump.
Most of everything else we've given you is old, and most of what I've not talked about is related to the procedures the bylaw outlines for the commission to follow a specific plan. If you or anybody here in the audience or on Zoom has any questions about the procedures that the bylaw lays out for you, we're happy to jump into those and go over them as well.
Okay,
I'll stop there.
great, thank you.
We're at the first green circle up there.
Yes, community meeting, that's
Yeah,
right.
Thank you. Part 3.
Yes, yes. And our goal is in that little blue diamond to determine whether there is substantial benefit
Could
Potential.
result.
that could result
Yes.
from a specific plan. Okay, so we have had a lot of commentary, and I just again want to assure you that we are hearing those comments, and we are taking them seriously. We have also had a lot of overlap of comments, so I think that if anybody on Zoom or here tonight has a comment that has already been shared numerous times, I'm again going to ask you, similar as to last time, to hold off on that until we hear from folks who may have some novel comments. And I would also like to propose that we do have a time limit to speaking. I was hesitant to do that in the previous meetings because I felt like it was a chance for folks to really share what was in their kind of on their minds. But we really need to move on and have a vote tonight. And I'm sure everybody will be relieved to hear that. So I would like to propose that we limit comments to 2 minutes, and then we will kind of reassess once we're through anyone who would like to comment. So I see a hand in the Zoom folks. So John, if you would like to begin, your 2 minutes will start as soon as you're speaking.
Well, okay. I'm a little discouraged by the time limit, and that I listened to everyone else speak for quite a while.
Let me just clarify that this is for a first speaking, and if we get through everyone who wants to comment and there is time remaining, then we can certainly hear more. But I think one of the points that was made before is that we have heard a lot of different perspectives. And so I don't want to shut anybody down, but but we also have kind of reached some saturation with the numbers of perspectives that we have. So
right, and I have comments on all those perspectives from my perspective.
okay, all right. Well, we will take that.
My name is John Hemmelgarn. I'm a 19-year resident of Williston. and I have attended 3 meetings devoted to discussion of this project, as have you. The introductory presentation over the summer and the 2 recent public comment hearings on the specific plan proposal. Having listened to the comments at those meetings, I offer the following thoughts. I am discouraged by the opponents who seem to ignore staff and planning commission explanations and requests and insist on discussing matters that are not part of the current issue in front of the commission. Safety, traffic, growth rate, housing type and affordability, et cetera, are all real issues and ones that need to and will be addressed with any proposal, regardless of when or how it is proposed. There will be a time and place to discuss these important issues. However, the question at hand is whether there is sufficient potential substantial public benefit to allow this proposal to move ahead to the next step in the process. I am disappointed by planning commission members who, despite relevant, pertinent, and compelling testimony, continue to suggest that the only potential substantial benefit is protecting the view shed. The bylaws also specifically identify protection of open space as a potential public benefit and allow for other benefits unique to a given site or proposal to be considered. Assuring windswept remains a viable entity qualifies on all 3 counts. I am dismayed that development opponents feel that the windswept supporters represent too small of a group to be relevant or to qualify preservation of windswept for even consideration as a potential public benefit. No benefit directly benefits 100% of the citizenry. The view shed only directly benefits those who A, drive along Mountain View Road, and B, actually notice and appreciate the view. It is entirely possible that a greater percentage of people associated one way or another with windswept over the years would consider maintaining the farm a substantial public benefit than the percentage of drivers along Mountain View Road would consider maintaining that view a substantial public benefit. I believe both are. Finally, I take exception to the assertions and insinuations that somehow this proposal is trying to circumvent the rules. The specific plan process is part of the rules and is a perfectly legitimate avenue to getting approval. The cost is the high threshold of providing a substantial public benefit. In this case, the benefit potentially comes in multiple forms. 1, reducing the density of development on this parcel in perpetuity. 2, maintaining a significant portion of the view shed. 3, preserving open space in some of Williston's disappearing working landscape. 4, guaranteeing Windswept Farm remains a valuable public resource as a multi-generational institution promoting physical, mental, and spiritual well-being in the heart of Williston Village. For those who maintain the pasture land is undevelopable and therefore this proposal provides no benefit, I urge the commission members to keep in mind that any new owner of this land could immediately restrict or completely deny Windswept's access, thus ending their ability to remain viable. As proposed, all these benefits are included at levels above and beyond the minimums required or that would be approvable through the standard review process. I applaud the applicant's willingness to put this option in front of the town for consideration and believe the commission should embrace this once in a lifetime opportunity to improve Williston forever. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hands up in the room. We'll go back and forth. Anybody wish to speak? Yes, go ahead. Can you remind us, everybody, of your name, please?
Donna Rosa.
Donna, would you mind coming closer to the owl? Maybe to that table, you're just so far. It's a little bit closer.
So I really don't really have an opinion strongly either way. John has really kind of opened this way open now, because at the last meeting we were told, well, you need to focus in on just one aspect. Now he's kind of opening all that up. But my question is this. I'm not that familiar with the building requirements for the residential area. I live in a different area. I'm assuming that the RZD does not allow 3, 4, 5-story buildings, correct?
No, the height limit in the RZD is 36 feet above average finished grade.
Okay, so we're talking all homes for 1 and 2 levels, kind of probably.
That's been the pattern. It's been what's been shown on the perspective plans, duplex style
Yeah.
homes.
But that's
Okay.
not to say that you couldn't have multifamily.
Correct.
Right, but I mean, I'm talking.
Beyond
height.
a
We're not
duplex.
gonna see 3-story, what we see in Penny Crossing.
Right.
Okay. So one thing that I haven't heard at all at several meetings that I've attended is this specific plan is basically saying that what is proposed with the 93 or 100 dwellings, whatever it is, will not remove that view shed. Okay, so by having that developed, we'll still have views. Conversely, if the developer went in without any restraints, you're talking 140 units, and that would remove the views. I guess that's the supposition. That's the premise of this. That's why this is being presented. But I haven't heard anybody tell me that that's true. I mean, everybody has their biases. The applicant has biases, you guys have biases, the town employees have biases. But I haven't heard any independent expert, I'm gonna say, for lack of any other word, telling us that if this was fully developed at 140 homes, that view would be compromised. And I think that's like a basic premise that you need to know that, okay, that would ruin the view, so then this is a great option.
Mhm.
But we haven't heard that, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I haven't heard that.
Well, as a way to at least potentially partially answer your question, Emily, could you call up the document with the sight lines on it? Did you have a
Or
look
the-
at that one?
And the theoretical build out.
The theoretical,
Yeah.
well,
Nobody knows that it will. We
Right.
just know
Right,
that
and
it
it-
might.
it
And so
might.
it provided an illustration of what a developer might choose to do
Right.
and what
Right.
they would choose to do. And
But I
this is-
guess
This
to
is about
me-
choosing between what's known and what is unknown.
But it's unknown, so we don't know if 140 homes would compromise that view, or, I guess that's my comment.
Yeah.
And you can, I mean, in order for me to make a logical decision
Sure.
whether this is a great idea or
Yeah.
not, that would be.
no, I think this is a really important issue. And because, if we accept that 11 acres is a substantial benefit, the fact that it enables a view or perhaps doesn't is really the question about the substantial benefit, right?
So does that benefit the 11 acres that
Well, and
houses
that's,
aren't?
yes, that's right. So this would be, what's on the screen right now. You see the lines crossing the yellow houses. That would be a conventional plan
Mhm.
under growth management. That could be one potential plan that would.
Could be, if
Could
the
be built,
developer did
right,
that.
right. So without the specific plan under current rules, this could potentially be built. And those lines that are sort of, those 3 lines that are kind of crossing are the sight lines toward Camel's Hump. I can't read, obviously, that Camel's Hump
Yes.
and Mount Mansfield.
No, Camel's Hump.
Just Camel's Hump. Okay, so from 3 different points. So I agree. I think this is a really important comment. And I think this is probably as much as we can guess. There might be some additional planning where, or visualizing where you could take photos from a couple spots along Mountain View Road. I know I did it on Google Street Map just to try and see, but then you'd have to like calculate out how high is this building and so forth. And I don't have the skills to do that, but
Now, if this.
Can you
was
show
a
the other
tradition-
map,
This
Emily?
here is a traditional.
right, that's
So
traditional.
If.
Can you show
does-
the other map?
Does this committee or whoever, DRB, do they have the ability to say, okay, so if we didn't do this, we do the traditional, that to restrict building in that 11 acres?
They probably do not.
No.
Okay. Yeah.
So what we talk about when we talk about what are called conservation areas, which are all of the natural resources that are taken into consideration when residential development is done. As you go through the list of those and what subdivision design is supposed to do in response to those different conservation areas, you go sort of through a hierarchy. You absolutely cannot develop in wetlands. You can cross them with a road or a path, but you cannot develop in wetlands. You cannot develop in
Steep slopes.
wetland buffers and steep slopes. Core wildlife habitat or wildlife travel corridor means you need to have somebody do a habitat disturbance assessment, and you need to abide by the recommendations of that assessment to the extent that DRB requires it. I sometimes say it kind of bluntly, viewshed eats last at the table. And so when you get down to saying subdivisions should protect a viewshed, what it says is something like, to the extent or in balance with the property owner's right to gain a meaningful return from their investment in the property. In other words, it's going to get built on.
Yeah, or partial protection of the view shed may be combined with development through good site planning. People should expect to have views that include residential neighborhoods.
Right. And so the view shed we have here that is mapped is what we call, I'm sorry, I just had it up. I believe it's middle ground. Is that right?
I think so.
So it's primary middle ground. And maybe background horizon as well, although I think that's from a different vantage point. So we can go into our bylaw and we can read about what Williston's trying to do when it protects view sheds. Williston's scenic view shed includes the open fields and meadows, wooded slopes and ridgelines, and scenic viewpoints that make up the visual character of the town. View shed categories are described below. These categories are further broken down into primary and secondary designations. Places where different components overlap are judged to be more significant. So if we're in that middle ground, we're talking about, it says these lands are generally more complex composition of layered wooded and open lands and man-made features. Because of their inherent complexity, they are able to absorb only limited and well-sited development without damaging their basic character. Middle grounds often are important in the visual transition between foreground and background. So when the DRB is looking at a site design and they're thinking about placement, they're thinking about how that placement relates to the values that are expressed in the bylaw. But they're also dealing with a statement in the bylaw that says, of all the things we're trying to protect, this is kind of the last one on the list. So once you've stayed out of the wetlands, once you've stayed out of the buffers, once you've followed your habitat disturbance assessment and stayed out of the travel corridors and core habitat, if there's anything left at all that's unprotected by any of those, we would expect you to be there, but most likely you're also going to be able to develop in the view shed. And we've had the experience of subdivision reviews over the years where view shed was the resource area that was ultimately developed, because it's not an absolute no, like wetlands and wetland buffers and steep slopes.
It's a should through creative siting.
Correct.
Oh, I know the area, we don't have these. But anyways, he took my time, so I still get.
Okay. Well, we
Um,
answered your question, I hope, at least as much as we can. You know what we know, right? Yeah.
Okay, so, Windswept Farms, there's been so many wonderful things said about this farm. Right now, it's not a self-sustaining farm, because if you lost that great, you have 5 acres, lose that area that you're currently using, you're not self-sustaining. I would love to see, instead of having approximately 40 acres of wetland given to the town, I mean, the developer wants to get rid of it because he's paying taxes on it and he can't build on it. So to him, it's somewhat useless. To us, we love views. It's not useless to us, but if it's given to the town, it's taken off the tax rolls, right? I'd love to see Glacier sell that land right around your farm there in the southern portion of the land, sell it to you for $1. then you are self-sustaining. You don't have to worry about the town giving you a lease. You don't have to worry. It probably, at some point, you're gonna want to retire. You have a wonderful place there. Hopefully, you could find another horse person, maybe somebody that already is there, that would love to take it over. But if somebody else wanted to buy your farm and you only have leased land, it's not a great feature, right? But if Mr. Glazer would sell you that wetland there, what's the difference between giving it to the town or selling it to you? Sell it to you for $1, you're fine, you're whole, you're set. And you're set for the next owner, so hopefully your farm will be there long after we're gone. I would love to see that. And I think Mr. Glazer seems like a wonderful man. I don't personally see a benefit of getting 40 acres of wetland. We're not getting taxes on it anymore. Yeah, you say, but it's wetland. It's not going to be developed. So that's my opinion on that. I would love to see that. I'd love to hear talk about that. I'd love to see you guys be able to stay there and not have to worry about leasing, whether you're going to have leased land or not. And to me, it's not a benefit to the town, in my opinion. One last thing. No, I'm not even going to give my time to someone else.
Thank you for your comments. I am sure that option has occurred to many people. I'm not privy to any of those conversations, but if anyone has more information and wants to share it, that would be fine. Okay, I don't see any hands up on the Zoom. So if anybody in the room would like to take a comment. Ken, yes, go ahead. Introduce yourself. Come to the owl.
Ken Melvo, I'm here representing the Glazers. Jack is attending via Zoom. He's out of town at another meeting, but so just a couple of comments. I know you want to move on, and I support you in moving on. I appreciate the time and the effort that the commission has taken. There were a lot of voices that all wanted to be heard, and I think it's a fair statement to say we would have liked to have seen it move on sooner than it has, but certainly we understand the time that was taken was necessary. One thing that I would like to emphasize is that in our submittal, the view shed clearly was the lead as the proposed substantial public benefit. It certainly was not the only one. We were very cognizant of the commentary that had been received about the interest in Windswept Farm, and that we really saw the potential that this could include a mechanism for ensuring that the Windswept Farm would continue. We really saw that as a plus, as part of the whole of what is trying to be offered here. I would like to emphasize restate one of the points that John Himmelgarn made, which is that what the bylaw doesn't require that the substantial public benefit has to be a view shed. And so part of the offer of the land to the town is the view is there, yeah, without a doubt. But the town would get that 11 acres to do whatever else it wants with it. And it could be some sort of a park. It could be all kinds of things. And we're not going to presuppose what the town's interest might be with that. But the town would get the land. So that's open space land. The other is that what's talked about the wetland area where where Windswept Farm operates is that we sort of conceded that it's all wet, but the reality is it's not really all wet. If we really did, a more precise delineation, we would find upland portions of land in there. We simply looked at it to say, by and large, most of it's wet, and there's a 20-foot, 50-foot buffer around a class 2 wetland required by Vermont state law. It's not worth parsing over finding these additional upland areas. That may seem like a small point, but I'm gonna make it nonetheless. That's there. So, you know, what the bylaw says is that there has to be a substantial public benefit, and open space is one of them. So if you take what's we're throwing out there at this point in its totality of open space, I would argue that there's a clear substantial public benefit from that. That's more above and beyond just the view shed. However, I would emphasize that the view shed is identified as an important goal in the town plan. If that weren't there, I'm going to tell you right now, I would not be here. That was the reason why I was willing to be involved in this project, because I saw it as having the potential for the town to realize an important goal that it would have had great difficulty in realizing, as Matt has already articulated, left to just what the bylaw says in the normal mechanics of development review. And that's, you know, and that's just the reality. You know, the bylaw doesn't cover every single thing. It covers a lot of ground, but it doesn't cover everything. And the reason why the specific plan process exists is because, like so many things in zoning, it's a blunt tool. And if the only thing you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. The reality is not everything is a nail. The specific plan is another way for the town to potentially implement the town plan vis-a-vis development regulations. And that's why it's there. And that is essentially is the essence of our proposal, you know, as the applicants. I would like to say in closing that I really urge the commission to vote. I urge the commission to vote in favor of setting up the committee. I think it provides an opportunity to continue the discussions and to work out the details, because there's a lot of details. If you look at the charge, there's a lot of stuff that's in there. That would all have to be chewed on by both from the applicant perspective and as well as from the various interests from the town. So I do encourage you to vote in favor of it. I encourage you to vote tonight. And I hope that we get to talk about it some more. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh my, yeah. Okay, thank you for all these hands up here. Terry Marin, I see yours rose to the top, so go ahead.
Okay, hi, how are you doing? My name is Terry Marin, and I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I just feel that I really have to say something. Just want to put my 2 cents in. I am a member of the Conservation Commission in Williston. I'm a resident, but I'm not here as a Conservation Commission member. I'm here as a resident to speak to this development. And yeah, one of the reasons I'm on the Conservation Commission is back in 2019, it was brought to the attention to the residents of Williston that this particular piece of land, you know, was proposed for development many years ago. And that's one of the reasons I think why Mr. Glazier purchased this land, was to keep it from being developed at that time. And you know, it has been identified by the Conservation Commission, which is, you know, it's public information, that it is high significance for conservation, and that it is in a potential wildlife corridor. Even though it's fields, it still has potential for wildlife activity. And the wetlands, the wetlands are conserved for a reason, or they're protected for a reason. And they're not just dead, and they're not just kind of garbage. They're full of biodiversity, they're full of animals, and they have a really significant you know, part in the environment to remain as wetlands. So I'm just would like to encourage the committee or the Planning Commission to go ahead and form the committee and to investigate different options for this piece of land to move forward. And maybe it's not in this particular format, the way is being proposed, but to work with different parts of the town, the Conservation Commission, the planning, residents, similar to the way the Catamount Community Forest was a year and a half. We worked on that to try to figure out the best use and planning for that piece of land. So I would just really encourage for this to go forward and to go through the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, the next comments can be from Jude, and I'll just remind everyone of aiming to keep to 2 minutes, as close as you can. Go ahead, Jude.
Jude Hersey. I live on Wildflower Circle, which is directly across from this piece of land that's being proposed to be developed. My main concern is the traffic issue. I measured the distance from Wildflower Circle up to the stop sign on Mountain View, and that's 3/10 of a mile. To suddenly have all of the traffic from these two particular streets try to funnel into that and deal with a stop sign situation really isn't, it isn't feasible. Some of the people aren't even going to be able to get out of their street to get into there because the traffic will be backed up. So that's my main concern at this point. I still think that having the access to Mountain View from these two developed streets makes much more sense, and it's safer for everybody concerned. There is no other neighborhood across from where it could come in onto Mountain View, and the visibility also would be a little bit better for people that are driving. I just wanted to be sure that that's going to be part of the study that's going to be done by this commission. And I think it would really make much more sense to go that way. I did see a schematic today, a map, when you put it up, that showed a road coming off of Mountain View. Is that a new proposed design?
So I think what you might be referring to was mentioned in the charge. So if you had a look at the draft charge that the Planning Commission would, if we did vote to go forward with the specific plan, we charge the committee. And in that charge, there is a description. Emily's got it highlighted there, I think. That because of some regulations around cul-de-sacs and numbers of houses, the recommendation in the charge is to explore the possibility of a Mountain View Road access point. So, yeah, and just a reminder too, I think that the traffic question is a common one, and I certainly an understandable one. But any development proposal will have to generate a traffic impact study. And so, yes, no matter what happens, we'll be looking at the traffic potential for this development.
That's actually really good news to me. I'm happy to hear that. One of the other issues that I had with that is oftentimes, if there's going to be like access by an ambulance or a fire engine or something, they like to be able to have two ways of getting into areas. So that also goes along with my concern, and my suggestion that there be access from Mountain View. So thank you very much, though, for considering that.
Okay, thanks, Jude. Yeah, and based on past experience, the fire and rescue folks are very, very vocal about their needs for access and turning around large fire engines and so forth. So that again is definitely, it's already baked into the pie.
Okay, that's terrific to hear.
Great.
We need to go along, we need to move along.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Jude. And what I'd like to propose is that we, again, try to stay to 2-minute conversations. Sharon, and then we'll hear from Jack.
Thanks. One thing I do want to have the Planning Commission consider is the view. While the top of the mountain would be visible under this plan, certainly it would be cut off at the base. So the foreground of a view is just as important as the background. And I don't think, mountain view is going to be the same if all we're seeing are the tops of mountains. So have that in consideration for where the view is looking at a mountain, to not have a building cut off the foreground to that mountain. Does that make sense? Okay, that's one minute. The next minute I have devoted to is that we don't have to develop every single square foot of land to make it into a park, for instance. What we do need is for wildlife to have access to each other, to have natural corridors. And as the world becomes even more desperate for vegetation, is the necessity to let things be natural. I wish more lawns would be natural. I would love to see this be more of a model for sustainability instead of having it be as we have done up to this point. I think that having more attention, not to a tiny house, but small houses. We don't need these 3-bedroom ginormous houses, as we do need affordable, and we need to learn to live more simply. So if somehow this project could be more of a model for future sustainable human life in consideration of vegetation and wildlife. That is what I'm looking at. If we're going to take this pristine land and forever change it, do we want to change it into the same old of neighborhood after neighborhood of almost identical housing with all this space in between the houses? Why don't we make the houses together, smaller, and leave it natural? And I think incorporating people with the vision for the future of what development should be versus looking at what has been is critical at this stage, if anything is going to be built there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Okay, I think this will be our last comment from Jack Blazer. Appropriately from Jack Blazer, yeah.
Sharon, I love what you just said. Thank you for that. I wanted to bring up something that was mentioned at the last meeting because it caused me some concern, and that is if the specific plan were to be something that would move forward, that would somehow set a precedent, and all the developers who were interested in building in Williston would then be looking at creating specific plans. So my response to that is the specific plan has been in bylaws for a number of years. It's only acted upon very seldomly because of a very good reason. That is, most developers are interested in really building as much as they can. That's not the case with us. So what we're looking to do is to give something to the town, which is 11 acres of arguably the most developable parcel of land on the property. And what we're looking to do is something that I don't think a standard developer would do. They would want to be building on it. So I don't think that there is a likelihood that if we were to move forward with a specific plan to improve, that it would result in a sort of a rush to the door for all of the other developers who are interested in building in Williston, because I just don't see that other developers have that sort of mentality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jack. Okay, we've heard a range of perspectives tonight, and what I'd like to do is ask planning commissioners to share their thoughts right now. And also, this is a great kind of final chance to ask questions. But really what I'm trying to do is get a temperature check to see kind of like where you are on this. And I've heard individually from a couple people, but that was on December 6th, so people might have changed their minds. So and I know it's there's a lot of complexity to this question. So, and obviously lots of different public perspectives. So who would like to start sharing your thoughts? Actually, I'd like to start maybe with folks online. Kate, would you be willing to share your thoughts?
Yeah, you pick me first.
Yeah, because you're the vice chair. In all its glory.
This has been a really difficult, question, I think, because, so many people have participated, which I think is absolutely amazing. And everybody has really good points. So I've really been stuck, reading all of the responses. I've really been stuck, kind of being pulled back and forth. But I would say that if you're asking me, do I think that there is a substantial benefit at this point, I would say yes. And I think it would be productive to move on to a committee.
Okay, thank you. I realized I put you on the spot and I appreciate you rising to the occasion. Shayla, can I put you on the spot next?
Of course. I agree with Kate that it has been incredibly complicated. I have listened to all of the comments and I have ingested as much of the materials as I could. I'm concerned that what we are doing here is providing a specific plan for this. And I hear the folks say that the wetlands for the farm could maybe be developed if there were different surveys done or more specific surveys done. So I did appreciate having that information. But I do think that while I very much agree and love the idea of that land being used for that farm and continuing to have that community continue to have access to that, I'm not sure that I'm convinced this is the way to do that or the only way to do that. And I'm really worried about the amount of housing that we have here in Williston and the affordability of it. And I don't think that this plan addresses that. And while there is a benefit to the view, I remain skeptical that those 11 acres, that we will be able to use them as a park or as something of that nature as was suggested, at least not in the immediate future, and that alone does not meet the bar to skip the line for all of this development. So at this point, I'm leaning towards not recommending a committee.
Okay, thank you. Who in the room would like to go next? Ellie, you want to go? Go ahead.
So at this point, I think I'm leaning towards voting yes. I think that there might be a substantial benefit. I want to thank everyone for your input. I really enjoyed these last 3 meetings and reading all the materials and hearing everyone's perspectives. I think the view shed, protecting the horse farm, I think reducing the capacity of residences that would be built in the area. I think all of that, could be a substantial benefit. And I think there's also something to be said about, every time that we've talked with Jack and Ken over the last almost year, I think since they first came, they've heard the feedback that town has given and they've incorporated it. So I really feel good about moving forward and continuing the conversation, knowing that this is a starting point. Let's not make perfect be the enemy of good. And, I really like to work with someone who has Williston's interest at heart.
Thank you.
I guess
Alex.
We'll just go in order here. I'm leaning towards to Kate and Ellie here. Similarly, at the risk of being redundant, I will say one redundant thing, which is I appreciate everybody's feedback. I understand the concerns about traffic. I understand the concerns about density and building. This is going to get built on sometime in the next 10 years. It's in the town plan. It's been zoned for a certain type of building. This is an opportunity to shape that very specifically, and to preserve something that has been identified as worth preserving in the town plan. And countless comments during things like even during the Finney Crossing form-based code, people would constantly talk about the view on Mountain View and the worthiness of preserving it. And Chapin was nice enough to comment in detail on the budget, including on the fact that we're not putting money away to buy these things for preservation. So we only have so many tools available to us to actually make that preservation happen, short of going and revising the zoning in this district and rethinking setbacks and things, which would be a long and complicated and probably futile effort. This seems like a really interesting way to achieve a conservation goal, one that people know all the time. And, yes, maybe at the cost of putting a little bit more housing on the board a little bit faster than we would have, but it's housing that was going to be on the board anyway. So I don't see that as necessarily a negative. So I would vote for a committee at this point. Call.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Chapin.
Sure. I don't want any suspense. I'll say that I am not in favor of proceeding. My answer would be no, but I'd like to explain. First of all, I too appreciate so much all the input. I appreciate the Glazers' intent. I want Mouse Farm to continue. And so my reasoning is for more because of our charge. And I'd like to sort of unpack it a little bit. I believe no matter how that 100 acres is developed, the 40 acres adjacent to the Moss Farm would probably remain open, probably as common land. And the difference of donating that as open land to the town is then the town can lease it to the Mouse Farm and the town could allow public access to that land. But I don't see that as a significant benefit given the number of parks we have and that we're not right now clamoring for a park that the public can get to on that property. I think that the view shed is a significant benefit. I think the word we're supposed to say is substantial, and the problem I have is that it's not substantial in comparison to the ask, because the ask is that for us to override our growth management system and basically build double the number of houses over the next 6 years that we otherwise would in this district. And although that's unfortunate, I realize for the Glazers that their timing is such that they're coming in with a project idea right when someone else has already taken up our allocation. I don't believe that we should. The reason why we have a growth management system is because the town as a whole has wanted to keep growth a little bit slower and to focus it in the growth center. The residential district is eventually going to be built out, but we've said we want it to be built out at 20 units per year over a longer period. So accelerating that building to me has all sorts of downstream effects from schools to roads to everything else. I'm saying that we're overriding that for 93 homes to me, doubling for the next 6 years is to me too big of an ask to be comparable. I wish that we had in the ERF enough money to buy the development rights to that 11 acres. I would totally support that, and it would give the Glazers some upfront capital and allow them to preserve that part. I wish that he could donate the part for the mouses to the mouses. And I'm probably mispronouncing your name. I apologize. How do you pronounce it?
It's Moss.
Moss, the mosses, excuse me. I would like to address John Hemmelgard a little bit too, because I really respect his opinions. He's a very valuable member of our community. And I do recognize that open space is a part of the give, if you will, on this. I just had not thought it was large. I also think that if we could guarantee the continuation of the Moss Farm that would be, you know, the windswept farm, that would be a substantial benefit. But what we can guarantee with the offer is that we can lease that land to the Mosses for $1 a year, not that that will continue. And so if the Mosses, for whatever reason, decided in 3 years to stop having a horse farm, we're not guaranteeing a horse farm, we're guaranteeing that we could lease the land to the horse farm. And to me, that's why I can't say that's a worth saying 92 more houses can be built in the next 6 years. So I wish that there were another way to have the moss farm continue. Also, it takes a lot of work by everybody to do this. And then when we get to the end, as we did with the New England chimney supply, you know, it's like all that effort and then you don't proceed. And so I just think in the end, the balance isn't going to come out on the end where it would go forward. When developed at a later time, also that development may look quite different. We may have at that point inclusionary zoning where a certain percentage has to be affordable. We may see in 5 or 6 years when the first houses could be built on this with the current growth management. We may see a barn-like, because you could accelerate with affordable housing. We may see a barn-like structure that echoes the idea of the agriculture there as the anchor for an affordable housing complex as part of the project with other homes behind it. I just think what we are imagining today is somewhat better than what we've done in the last 30 years because it's mostly duplexes. But it's not, to me, the next generation of what we want to do with Sharon Gutman's comment about living smaller and meeting our housing needs better. I feel like the fact that this might have to go slower is a good thing in the long run for the community, not a bad thing. So I feel like it's bad luck for the Glazers that are coming in at this point, and I value all of their objectives and would like to see their objectives met in other ways.
Okay, thank you. Well, this has been very, very tricky, and we are also, I should note, in an awkward position on the Planning Commission of having 6 members at the moment, 6 active members. And so I'm afraid I'm going to cause a tie because I also I feel that there could be well, let me just say, of course, as with everyone else, I really appreciate everyone's comments, and I love the passion that the Windswept Farm folks came here with, and that's a wonderful thing. The real sticking point for me, and I have gone back and forth many times on this, the real sticking point to me comes down to something that's similar to what Chapin just said about potential future development of affordable housing, of housing that meets our energy goals in more comprehensive ways. These are things that are written very clearly in the town plan. And so I feel that those are kind of overwhelming to me, those goals. And so I also will join Shayla and Chapin and say that I do not think we should go to a specific plan. Matt, it's your turn to look up the rules to find out.
Tie is effectively a, right?
I mean, that's effectively a vote. If we would like to kind of, now that you've heard everybody's comments, if we would like to take a vote, we could do that. Maybe things will shake out differently. We can do that while you look up the rules. How's that?
Sure, and I'm just going on Robert's rules, so that's the standard that, you know, Vermont town boards use.
While
Well-
Matt does that, I could just, usually at DRB, like we give a staff report and highlight briefly if you were to move forward, what those findings of fact are and what the specific plan chapter says. So the findings would be, the specific plan option may only be used where the planning commission determines that a substantial benefit to the town could result. quote, conserving one or more open space assets identified in the town's comprehensive plan or another open space asset acceptable to the Conservation and Planning Commissions, end quote, is listed as a substantial benefit. Citation. Number 3, the applicant proposes open space offered to the town of Williston in 2 distinct areas. 11 acres plus or minus of view shed along Mountain View Road and 42 plus or minus acres of pasture, forest, and wetlands near Winshoek Farm. The open space must remain an acceptable asset, even if the subdivision and open space design evolves during the specific plan process. Number 4, the town plan states scenic view sheds. The town will protect and maintain the visual character that defines Williston, including open fields and meadows, wooded slopes, ridge lines, and scenic viewpoints. Number 5, the town plan states protect other working landscapes. Other working landscapes include tree farms, commercial woodlots, nurseries, sand, gravel mines, and fee-based outdoor recreation. Number 6, amendments to Chapter 11 growth management, such as a separate allocation schedule, is not considered a change to administrative procedures as defined in citation.
All
And
right, so this is really helpful.
this property is mentioned in Chapter 13, where it says scenic properties that currently have no formal protection from incompatible uses include the fields at southwest intersection of Mountain View Road and Old Stage Roads. That's in the scenic view sheds section of the town plan.
All right, so I realize that there are many of us, myself included, who have, who really feel both sides of this and it's hard, right, to put your fist down on one side or the other. So let's take a vote now and go around. We'll go in the same order. If you can just state your vote, and let me just say that it's okay to change. If you've heard something in the last couple of minutes, including from the staff report, that shifts your thinking, then that's certainly okay. So Kate, can I have your vote?
Yes, I'm going to stick with my original vote. I really, my son has used windswept farm, and I take Chapin's point that it would not be there in perpetuity necessarily, but I do feel that something being there like that, having that benefit for the community, or a lot, a good portion of the community, is a very large benefit. And a lot of people have noted that the view shed is also, as you drive up, is also very important, as noted in the town plan. So I'm going to stick with my vote.
Thank you. Shayla?
I'm gonna vote no.
Ellie?
Voting yes.
Alex, I'll vote yes to the committee option still.
And I'll vote no with plenty of ambivalence and plenty of support for all of the goals.
Okay. Any information on the rules?
Failure to gain a majority would be a failure to move forward.
Oh, boy.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We should go in the opposite order, Megan.
I know,
We
right?
could really put the pressure on Kate this time.
Yeah, I know, we could have.
Speak
She's not
first
even
and
here in person. Okay, so I'm going to change my vote. I am going to suggest that we do move forward with a specific plan, because although I have a lot of concerns about how some of the specifics will shake out, I feel like it would give us a chance to work through some of those issues. And I really hope that when we complete the charge, that some of the specifics of the design are really taken under consideration. I also took to heart what Sharon Gutwin said. I think that that is the direction we need to go in. But I am also concerned about losing access to, some amazing open space. And that last piece that you read, Emily, and the staff report is I think was kind of my tipping point that that I do feel that is a substantial benefit to consider, could potentially be a substantial benefit. So I will vote yes, and that means we are 4-2, and we'll move forward with the specific plan. So any immediate comments or instructions?
Yeah, so this isn't
Okay.
the end, this is the beginning.
Right.
At our January 3rd meeting, we'll include on the agenda that draft charge. That's a draft that Matt and I wrote.
Yeah.
And the planning commission can edit and revise it based on the feedback you heard. It creates that path forward, what the applicant and that committee should work on.
Mhm.
On the January 3rd agenda as well will be a time to consider who you appoint.
Mhm.
So the Conservation Commission and DRB have already chosen their members who would support or who would serve on the committee. Someone from the Planning Commission would need to be on there, as well as 2 to 4 members of the affected neighborhood and community at large. I think 19 people put their names in the hat for 2 to 4 spots, so you'll have to make some decisions there.
Williston volunteers.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe anyone who doesn't make that committee could consider one of our other town boards who, I think pretty much all our other town boards have a vacancy.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
Yeah, and then that would set forward those committee meetings. They've been preset at Thursday evening, so even if folks aren't on the committee, they could still listen in or find the minutes online.
Is that weekly?
Probably once or
good.
twice a month.
Okay.
Probably plan for a site visit as well. That will also be publicly open. And part of that committee charge would be, okay, what's the deadline for that the committee and applicants have finished their homework, getting through all those
Mhm.
charge items, probably sometime in like May or June in the spring. But that can also be discussed on the 3rd.
So over the time between this meeting and the next one, I would encourage commission members to look at the draft charge, think about what's there, what's not there, and what kind of instructions you would want to give a committee of your fellow citizens that was reviewing a specific plan proposal. As you do that, please feel free to reach out to Emily or myself with any clarifying questions about how this lines up to the bylaw or the town plan. But one thing we learned from the New England Chimney Supply specific plan was that we do better when we go into that process with the committee with a very clear charge, particularly around the quality and extent and feasibility of the benefit that the plan approval hinges on. So recall that the committee would do their work along with the applicant, and that a proposed specific plan would ultimately return to this body for a vote, which would then either move or not move it forward to the select board for consideration under the same procedures that are used for amending the town's zoning bylaws. So next couple of weeks, I know you've all got all kinds of free time to read a draft committee charge. We will be around. Please do reach out as you have questions for that. So we can be effective helping you develop that charge and guidance for the committee.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And again, thank you to everybody who has joined us on Zoom and in the room, especially those of you who came multiple times. Appreciate it. And I believe that we have some minutes to approve, as well as vote on, or sorry, as well as the annual report. So if you would like to leave us to our minutes and annual report, I give you a moment to gather your things. I will just ask that if there are conversations, if they can happen down the hall, so that we can focus on this. And folks on Zoom, thank you for your participation. you're welcome to stay for the minutes and the annual report, but if you would like to sign off, this is a good time
And
for
have a
that.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Christmas, guys. Happy holidays.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as is.
Okay, yeah, I thought they looked
Meeting,
great.
good.
I'll
Yes,
second that.
all right. So all in favor of accepting the minutes as written?
Aye.
Okay, we all approved in the room.
Oh, thank you.
Kate, okay.
I,
And then Sheila.
I thought they were fine, but I don't, I wasn't there. So,
Sheila has a
Oh,
thumbs up.
okay, right. That's right,
Can-
yes.
While we're on that topic, this might be for you, Emily. If you go to the planning commission main site and it lists the planning commission members, it still lists me as vice chair instead of Kate.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
So
you.
one place.
We'll fix that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fix it right now.
I'm gonna fix it right now, because if I don't do it right now, it'll never happen.
Yeah.
Job ever, it's like a proofreader,
Yeah.
software tester, you're hired, dude.
Okay, and then the other was, do we have to vote on accepting the annual report? Or do we just? have a
It's not
quick-
as formal if you want to.
Okay.
Consensus of the group is fine.
Okay, and you managed to squeeze it onto. There was a little bit hanging off when I looked at it earlier today,
Oh,
but
good job,
we
yeah.
have no space for photos. We were too busy to have photos.
We were.
Okay, did everyone have a chance to review the annual report? Really shout out to Shayla and Chapin for,
And you, it
Well-
was a triple.
it was a triple effort.
Triple
Yeah, I
threat.
came at the end and just kind of wrestled it down to one page, but Shayla and Chapin did the heavy lifting, so thank you very much for that. Any questions or omissions or anything that you see that may need fixing?
Were there any changes? I have not reread it since you submitted it. Are there any changes since?
Not too many, I'm not seeing it here.
Good night, Ken.
Night, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, Shayla, or Kate, Shayla, you had a lot to do with this, but I don't know if you disagree with any of my,
No, it looked good. And I appreciate the squishing it onto a page.
okay, great. Good. Any other comments on that? No?
No.
All right, great. So I think we can approve the annual report.
Great. We'll get it to the clerk.
Great, thank you very much. And I think that's our last item, so we can adjourn 9 minutes early.
Oh, my goodness.
All
So we
right.
never gave you anything.
Right, Merry Christmas, right?
9 minutes.
We can start working on
Bye,
this.
bye, Zoom people. Bye.
Good to see you guys.
Happy New Year. See you next year.
Yeah, see you.